I started off with a black primer, and if you want to know how I did the base, you can check out my Iron Man Hulkbuster video. Moving on, we'll do a general coat of Cerakote silver to the entire model. If you want, you can apply the silver to the areas that are just going to be silver, but I find future colors go on better with this base coat. You could airbrush it or sponge it on if you like, but I brushed it on this time. And following with that base coat, we're going to do a thin down layer of Aethermatic Blue Contrast Paint by Warhammer Color. This will give it a very nice blue tone for a kind of like a space age silver. I really like this color for shading those kind of high-tech metals. Once again, if you know where your silver is going to be, you can just hit those areas and leave the other areas without the wash. And that's completely up to you. I did it all over because that's how I want to do it, and it's faster for me. And this is what it will look like once that wash is dried. We're then going to move on to the red, and we're going to be using the Forged Red True Metallic Metal from Vallejo. If you watched my Hulkbuster video, you know that I used the ruby red there, but this time we're using the Forged Red. And at the end of the video, I'll show you a comparison of the two. I use the Air version because I think it goes on smoother and it goes on extremely nice over this silver base coat. This is just the general base coat, there's nothing fancy about it, so just hit those areas that you know you want red. Next, we're going to begin shading the red, and for that, we're going to be using the Forged Red Shade color from the True Metallic Metal range. We're going to water it down with a little bit of water, and then we're going to douse the entirety of the red. Be careful not to hit your steel areas, but if you do, we can fix it afterwards anyways. Now, when you're applying it, you can have some areas less thinned, and when that happens, you might receive a little bit of pooling. If you do, it's actually okay in some areas. It creates a nice, deep shadow for you to utilize. So after your thin down wash is dried, you can add in some less thin down in those deep recesses and get a nice shadow for contrast. And then once that's all dried, we'll go in with another shade. This time we're going to glaze Amphora Red, and we're going to do it very sparingly. And the purpose of this is to get those deeper, darker shadows in areas that might not be so easy to pool with the wash that we just did. And because the wash for the True Metallic Metals keeps the gloss look of the metals and this Amphora Red won't, it will also create a very powerful contrast of darkness. So even though you might have gotten more of that wash in those crevices, don't be afraid of adding this Amphora Red into them. And as needed, you can always do multiple coats if you want to get even more of that shadow in there. I also do a little bit of stippling, which is those dots, just to get a gradient going on. So here you can see those darker shadows in there. It's not a whole ton, but it does do a lot to build that contrast. Now, we're going to be moving back to our Forged Red Air version, and we're going to be rebuilding our red just in case we overshadowed some areas. You don't necessarily want to add a whole ton of it. The contrast is extremely important, so we do want to make sure our shadows are still intact. But as we rebuild this color, it's definitely going to layer the foundation for our bright red that we're going to have that's really stunning. So just take your time with it, add it where you want. If you look at it when you're done and you think it needs more of that red color in areas, just add more. Once we're done rebuilding, we're going to be moving on to our first highlight, and that's going to be the light version of Forged Red. Now, the light version of the color is very orange. Generally, when you start to highlight reds, you're either going to go orange or you're going to go pink, and in this case, it's orange. Now, the important part about this paint being orange is that if you paint too much of it, the model will look orange rather than it would look red. Now, what this means is you're going to want to not do a lot of highlighting. You're going to want to go about it slowly, and as you highlight and you're done and you think you need more of that highlighting, just add more. Don't go overboard in the first go. So realistically with these highlights, you're going to be hitting those raised areas where the light would be hitting. Now, metallic paint naturally reflects light, so it kind of highlights itself, but as you add in this highlight, it will do even more. It'll look brighter, it'll look great. So definitely stick to it. And the effect is more noticeable in person than it is on camera. And once it's complete, you can see how much more brighter those highlights are. And for the final highlight, and you don't necessarily have to do this, but I like it, is you can add some sterling silver into your light forged red, and you can do little dot highlights to really grab attention to specific areas like the chest or the head. Now, once again, you don't want to do a whole lot, and especially as you get towards the silver parts of the armor, it could blend in a little bit with that silver, and you want to avoid that. And with that, the red is completely finished. And look how bright and shiny it is. So like we did with the red, initially we're going to go back to that silver and we're going to rebuild it with our Cerakote silver. And you don't want to add too much of this Cerakote silver. You want to fix any errors you might have gotten that red on the silver, but you do want to keep that blue tone. And the more you paint of the Cerakote silver, the more of that blue tone you're going to lose. And really just small little strokes can make a huge difference. So once again, take your time. Take your time with any miniature project. You don't have to rush things. And if you do want to rush things, that's fine too. But you know, if you want it to look really good, you do have to take your time. And with the face, you want to be especially careful because that's where everyone's going to look initially. They're always going to stare at the face as well as the chest and any special effect that might be going on. Next, we're going to move on to sterling silver, also the true metallic metal. And this is a very bright color. So as you're highlighting, remember, less is more. And when something gets so bright, the more brightness that there is, the less bright that thing looks. So you definitely want to be reserved and utilize that contrast to make it look really bright. Moving on, we're going to take bold titanium white by Acryl and we're going to add it to these eyes. To do eyes, brace yourself against the desk, brace your hands together, and then just kind of do small strokes until you've got it. You might make a mistake like I did there, but you can fix it. It's okay. We'll also add that white to the center of the core as well as all those little baubles across his body. Once that's all dried and cleaned up, I'm going to go in with a fluorescent color. This time I'm going to go in with pink. I'm using Cuttlefish Colors Pink Dragon, and I'm going to apply it over all of those areas that we just painted white. Fluorescent paints are a great sort of cheaty way to make your things look like they're glowing. So don't be afraid to hit a little bit out of that white area that you painted. Once that's all dried, because I thought it was a little bit too pink, we're going to go in with Vallejo's fluorescent red and we're going to hit the outer rims of those areas that we just painted. This will also give you various degrees of brightness. And when you're painting the eyes, you can actually start the brush a little bit lower on the cheek and then drag it towards the eye socket. This will actually give you a nice glowy effect on the eyes and it will be quite vivid and striking. And you can see how that striking glowy effect on the eyes looks here. And when we're finished with that, we're going to go back in with our Pro Acryl white and we're going to thin it. And then we're going to add small white dots into the center of the core. You can do a little bit more stippling outwards to have like energy flowing out of it. You can also hit the eyes with it as well. And here Iron Lad is all finished, except he's not completely done. You can see how bright and shiny he is, and I think he's a bit too shiny. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be utilizing some lacquer to kind of bring that down a little bit. I use a gloss coat and then a dull coat. The gloss coat protects, the dull coat brings everything down to the same shininess, the same reflectiveness. And this is what he looks like with that sealant all finished. You can see that he's still bright, he's still shiny, but it's less so, and I think it's so much less so that it looks really, really good. It's also brought all the colors to the same reflectiveness, so those shadows work even better. Now, with Iron Lad, I painted him in the Forged Red, which has that orange sort of look. In my previous video for Hulkbuster, I painted it with Ruby Red. And you can see the difference here. The Ruby Red has a much more pinkish sort of violet tone to it, while the Forged Red has a much more orange tone to it. For the traditional Iron Man look, I think the Forged Red does look better, but that doesn't mean the Ruby Red is bad. It's a very beautiful, very vivid color. But both of these colors are extremely good for Iron Man, whichever one you pick. It's great, it's gonna work great, and it's gonna look great. I did a lot of the yapping that I would typically reserve for this end shot in the video just a little bit ago. So not much to say. I hope you liked this video. If you did, like, subscribe, leave a comment, share it with your friends. I would appreciate all of that. I hope I really showcased this Forged Red to you. I think it's great for any kind of metallic red you have, such as like Thousand Suns for Horus Heresy or the Dominion for StarCraft. It's great, and you're great, and I'll catch you in the next one.